Hello dear Motorsport-Magazin.com friends and Formula One fans from Monaco on Saturday evening. Behind me in Rascasse, the party's already going on, but Haas is definitely not in a party mood. Immediately after qualifying, Nico Hülkenberg had to go to the stewards, the accusation unnecessarily impeding another driver. However, he was actually acquitted on this point. The reason was that there were problems with the radio, which often happens here in the narrow streets of the Principality of Monaco. The team informed him well in advance, but it didn't go through. That's why he got off lightly and was allowed to keep 12th place on the grid for the time being, but then things came thick and fast. Haas officials were summoned to the stewards once again. This time, however, not because of the traffic and obstruction issue. No, a technical offense. Joe Bauer, the FIA's technical delegate, had written a report. It stated that the rear wing had opened too far with the DRS open, and then it was clear to everyone that there only one consequence could follow: disqualification. In fact, it didn't even take that long. The stewards looked at the case, listened to Haas, and then found the team guilty. So both cars were disqualified from the classification. As things stand, Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen have to start from 19th and 20th place on the grid, but it could also happen that it will be a start from the pit lane if Haas has to change something on the car and thus break parc fermé. What exactly was going on? It was human error. It wasn't about tolerances that couldn't be met during production. No, Haas brought in a special package for Monaco for the first time, a Monaco rear wing. However, this works a little differently to the usual rear wing. The maximum 85mm that are allowed between one rear wing blade and the other when the DRS is open must be maintained across the entire width. But now it was the case that the Haas couldn't manage that with the new rear wing on the side. The crucial problem was that the engineers who had designed this rear wing, they didn't let the mechanics know that they had to adjust the DRS accordingly. Because with the old rear wing from Haas, the maximum distance was reached in the center. With the new rear wing, the maximum distance is reached at the edges, and the Haas mechanics didn't know that, so they set it up incorrectly. A bitter mistake that cost Haas dear. Instead of grid positions 12 and 15, they are now grid positions 19 and 20. Hülkenberg and Magnussen will therefore start from the very back of the grid. But things went much better for Charles Leclerc, and I admit it, I'm a little bit relieved that he put the Ferrari on pole here. Otherwise you would have said, what kind of fairy tales is he always spinning here? He's always telling us about Verstappen's problems, and then the Dutchman ends up on pole again. No, here in Monaco, Max Verstappen didn't make it to pole position for the first time in the Formula One season 2024. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, did. And he said himself that it was mentally difficult. After setting the fastest time twice in the second free practice session and the third free practice session, and after he looked really strong in the first free practice session as well, Charles Leclerc said that he could really only lose. The hours between the third free practice and qualifying were very demanding for him and took their toll on his nerves. On the one hand, he could only lose, and on the other hand, he also had to have his engine replaced. Ferrari identified a small problem with the V6 engine. You could already see that a week ago in Imola. Ferrari recognized a few more problems with the Miami engine and had to install engine number 3 at an early stage. Now this engine number 3 is out again for the moment, and Ferrari had to install engine number 1 from this season, so that was not a good omen for him. And then qualifying didn't really get off to a good start either. He just about managed to squeak through in Q1. There was also a small incident. We'll talk about that at the end of this video. Then he improved a bit in Q2. And in Q3, that's when he dropped the curtain. Yes, he took it a bit easier in the beginning. I think he approached it very cleverly, because he just had to get through first, not take any unnecessary risks. But then in Q3 he noticed when he picked up the pace, the handling of the Ferrari SF24 changed a bit. Then he had to put the front wing on again so that he had more grip on the car's front axle. Yes, but it worked. He lived up to his role as favorite. After the first attempt in Q3, it was still really exciting. He really pulled out the big guns on the second attempt in Q3 when he was 1.5 tenths of a second ahead. That was a demonstration of power from Charles Leclerc here in Monaco. But we know that he has already started on pole in 2021 and 2022 and failed to win twice, even here in Monaco, where overtaking is almost impossible. Leclerc has a Monaco curse, so to speak. Of course, he also has pretty tough competitors. Oscar Piastri in second place, his own Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz in third, and Lando Norris in fourth. So the race on Sunday won't be a cakewalk for him. Now you're all saying, yeah, but Monaco, what's going to happen there? Something has happened before. In 2021, he couldn't even start from pole position. There was the accident in Q3 on Saturday, and Ferrari didn't investigate it properly. Then the drive shaft broke and so on. Hopefully something like that won't happen this weekend. Then, in 2022, it was up to the strategy. That was the one thing that got in the way. A strategy, you think a one-stop race like in Monaco is actually not that difficult. But it's not as easy as it actually looks. Something can always happen with the strategy. Tire degradation also plays a small role here. There is a lot of graining, and now you say, it doesn't matter if you slow down, the other guy can't overtake anyway. Yes and no. Of course, you have to have the pace in the right phases of the race to open up the gap. The laps before and after the stop are incredibly significant so that the others cannot make an undercut or overcut, and that's why you have to be able to use the tires properly in this phase. If they go through a graining phase right at that moment, then it obviously looks pretty unfavorable. The start is also a factor, of course. The sprint to turn 1 on the Circuit de Monaco is the shortest of the entire season. Normally, not much happens there, but we've already seen it in the Formula 3 race today. The German driver Tim Tramnitz, for example, was able to make up a position straight away, moved up to second position, and took second place in the end. Something can always happen. Safety car, red flags, so... Then we've still completely ignored driving errors. That can still happen as well. That means Charles Leclerc starts from pole position, but whether he gets rid of the Monaco curse, that is a different matter. And it is also different matter whether you will accept a new challenge. Because at Motorsport-Magazin, we are searching for reinforcement. Above all, we are hiring a video editor. Whether you already have professional experience or are a newcomer, you are welcome to apply. Most importantly, the vacancy is a full-time employment at our location in Graz in Austria, and maybe you'll be editing the next video blog here. As always, all information is available at jobs.motorsportmagazine.com. I've already mentioned the first 4 on the Monaco starting grid, and still haven't mentioned Max Verstappen. He only qualified 6th, and that's quite a disaster for the reigning world champion. We talked about it yesterday, the whole weekend just isn't going right for Verstappen and Red Bull in general. Verstappen said the car feels like a go-kart. This doesn't sound bad at first, since a go-kart is agile. But a go-kart also has no springs, no dampers, so no real wheel suspension. And that was the point that Max Verstappen was referring to. The car bounced around. Yes, and that's the reason why it didn't work. He lost almost all the time in the second sector, 0.3 of a second there. He was actually fastest in the first sector, it worked really well there. But in the second sector, especially when there was a bit of banking in the corners, such as in Mirabeau or on the curbs, Verstappen couldn't keep up at all. He lost all the time there. And he says it's not really a surprise. We knew right from the start, before the weekend, we've already talked about the fact that Monaco isn't Red Bull territory, but so extreme. Max Verstappen says it's actually been that way since 2022, since the new generation of Formula 1 cars. It's just that Red Bull often had such a superior car during that time that they were able to drive different lines and perhaps didn't even notice it because the rivals were so far away. Now the competitors are much closer, and the qualifying result is therefore 6th place on the grid for Verstappen. Yes, he touched the barrier slightly at the end, but he was actually quite happy with his lap time. We mustn't forget either. He was only 0.3 of a second off Charles Leclerc and 1.5 of a second off the second place in the end. So that wasn't even so dramatic. Verstappen says that he was actually satisfied with the laps up to that point. And we mustn't forget where his teammate Sergio Perez qualified, 18th position. Hereof, Verstappen also says, well, Perez is actually a specialist for F1 street circuits, especially here in Monaco where Perez has won before. That shows that there's a lot going on. Verstappen also says that it's a fundamental problem. It's not something you can simply fix now. On some tracks it will be more pronounced, on others less so. And then we still have to talk about Q1, because I've already announced that Charles Leclerc had a problem there. Something got tangled up on the front wing and he almost retired. But it was even tighter for Lando Norris. Something got tangled up under the floor of his McLaren MCL38. He lost 3 seconds in performance because of that, so he had to come to the pits and his mechanics removed the whole thing. Hence, Norris then almost didn't make it across the line. He only had one more attempt. At McLaren, they were in a real peeve afterwards. Because the perimeter advertising had come loose and it was lying all over the track, the car from Norris picked up the scraps. McLaren said that's not Formula 1 standard, that mustn't happen, that is a disaster, and should the outcome of the race be influenced only by luck whether you pick up such perimeter advertising or not? We've done some research into this problem. The perimeter advertising here comes from Sports Signage, as always in the entire Formula 1 racing calendar. This is a German company that has decades of experience with the whole issue. It has even been a licensed FIA supplier for a decade. The perimeter advertising here is actually the same as we had it in Monaco in the past. It's kind of a special foil. It's not as trivial as you might imagine. It's not just a sticker, but a special film that is attached quite firmly to the crash barriers and the Tech Pro barrier on the sides of the track. It fulfills certain criteria. For example, it doesn't catch fire so easily. Of course, that should never happen if a car crashes into it, and it's actually also made to bear a bit of damage so that it doesn't immediately get caught up in the race cars. Yes, you can also see traces on the walls. You can see that it can take a beating, but the perimeter advertising just can't take it when the cars keep hitting it perpetually. There was a lot of contact. At some point, this led to it becoming detached. On Sunday, the boards will be removed at the hotspots, that is, the advertising will be removed. This means that the problem from Saturday should not occur again. Now we're looking forward to a hopefully exciting Monaco Grand Prix. Feel free to write in the comments, who do you think will win? Has Charles Leclerc's Monaco curse been broken? Yes or no? I'm looking forward to your opinion. And please subscribe to the channel. We are very happy about each and every one of you.